Bunnie, it's good to see you back at Austin Grad.
Good to see you.
I remember you as a student. You were here in 2003, which was the year that I arrived. And
Yes.
I think that's when you got your undergrad degree.
Correct.
And then you did the master's degree
Yes.
and took that diploma in 2004, I believe.
Yes.
What brought you to Austin Grad to begin with?
That's an interesting question because I had been out of school so long, and I wanted a bachelor's degree. And then when in my church, in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, there was a requirement for a baccalaureate degree. So I'm not really sure how I found out about Austin Grad, except that it was a church on the hill, and it looked real pretty, and I said, I can do this. And for a deeper understanding of the Word of God and how to impart it to others was one of the main drawing factors.
When were you ordained?
In 2003, after I got my baccalaureate.
So that was a requirement.
Yes.
And what's the requirement now?
Master's of Divinity or higher than a baccalaureate.
Okay. So
from an accredited school.
Yeah. Yeah, and with you being from a tradition, and one of the things that we say in our identity statement here at Austin Grad is that we are a seminary associated with the Churches of Christ,
yes,
but in conversation with all who name Jesus as Lord.
Right.
Talk about you coming into a Church of Christ school from a different tradition and how you were received and how you felt being here.
Well, I really didn't feel like an outsider because everybody was so warm and so inviting and so helpful. The only time that I really noticed a difference was when we did church history. And so I was really excited because I thought, okay, now I get to talk about my church history. But in the scheme of things, it really didn't matter because all we were here to do was to learn how to impart knowledge about Christ in a deeper understanding and in a way that people could accept Him and continue to want to learn more about Him. So the traditions, I learned a whole lot about the Church of Christ, but I enjoyed it because I like chapel. Well, I could hear different speakers and different teachers and coming from different traditions, we don't always preach the same. Right. And so that opened a door for me to see other perspectives about how the Word of God could be presented. So,
right. I remember you made a presentation for us several years ago, and one of the things that you commented on was chapel. You mentioning chapel made me have that memory. In the Church of Christ tradition, we are primarily a cappella.
Oh, I love it.
Okay, talk a little bit about chapel and a cappella singing.
Well, if you don't have a really good voice, it can be challenging, but to hear the harmony and to really hear the words, and I remember Ship has a beautiful voice, and he would sing, and sometimes he would do it in Hebrew.
Okay.
And so, I mean, you can hear those rich tones, and Dr. Peterson and different ones. And I learned how to read music and try to stay on key. So, the hymns were hymns that I knew. So, when you sing hymns, because our church has a hymn tradition, it was not difficult to follow it. So, I always liked it.
How important has getting a theological education been in your practice of ministry? And talk a little bit about the church that you were in and the church that you're in now, and how you've been able to incorporate the theological training that you gained here at our school and to put that into practice in your churches.
In my home church, which is Grant Worship Center on Kramer, it's a larger congregation, so I was familiar with working with diverse ministries in the church. And the learning that I've received here at Austin Grad helped me with children because I was primarily with children's church and with the homebound ministry. And so I had to keep remembering not to say, this is what I learned in seminary. And so those things came in play. In particular, one day we were doing our sermon presentation in class, and it was 2 children. And one of the things that the professor pointed out was, because I stood when I spoke, and I should have been on their level. And so whenever I talked to children in children's church, I always had to remember to be on their level so that they could see eye to eye. And so that made a difference. The congregation that I am pastoring for now, going on 9 years, is a smaller congregation of 50. And it's primarily a family church. And the dynamics are totally different. And when you are in well, I'm not in the rural, but I'm in Elgin, so that's not a metropolitan area. And so the dynamics of the people's needs are different. And so the approach to teaching them is quite different. And I tend to rely on things. And so what I wanted to find out is how much did they know? So we went through the Bible, and so that's where we are. And so when they ask questions now, I have one student, and I said, if I could ever have a crowning jewel for my ministry, when I got there, this lady was not really a student of the Bible, but now hearing her participate and remember, I mean, it almost brings tears, because people in the community are even saying, wow, how she's changed. And it's not me. It's the Jesus that she sees and what I present as Jesus to her that allows her to move. And I think that's the goal of every pastor, to want to nurture those people till they are able to walk by faith and not by sight.
If I'm hearing you right, when you were at your home church, as you called it, which is, I assume, is where you were when you were ordained.
Yes.
Okay. And you were more in an assistant minister role, is that correct?
I was the assistant pastor.
Okay. So how much preaching did you do at that time?
A lot.
A lot.
I did, in my home church, mostly I did funerals. So everybody knew me for funerals. And that's where I sort of got my teeth into preaching, because I knew the people, and so it was easier for me to preach about the ones that I knew and preach to their families. But then when I was in children's church, I had to learn the different dynamics, because preaching to children is quite different from preaching to adults. And sometimes you have to stop in the middle of the sermon and entertain a question. And so that dynamics is different.
Right. Okay. Anything about any of your classes that you remember? I mean, that's several years ago now.
Oh, but I remember. Jim Beyer, I had teaching Christians or Christian education with him. And I think the first quiz he gave, nobody did what he expected them to do. And so he comes back to the playing ground. He says, you know, we're not going to do tests anymore. And so my question to him was, what is it that you really want us to do? Do you want us to regurgitate what you taught us, or do you want to know what we learned? And we found that what you learn is different than what people teach. But then when they teach, you learn more than they think you're learning. So I like that, and I like Professor Peterson when he illustrated how Jesus really performed the Last Supper. We think they're sitting on cushioned seats, and they really weren't, and he reclined on the desk. And so I have that vivid picture, and so when I teach children, I try to do that to them, and they go, really? And so you're opening their eyes to and whetting their appetites, because what I found out, I had a little boy in children's church, but on Wednesdays we had Bible study. He would bring his Bible, and he would quiz me. Now, what does this mean? So when you do that and you stimulate a child learning, that's what we want to do. So Austin Grad has been a very pivotal role in my ministry as far as teaching and preaching is concerned.
Okay. Would you encourage others to attend Austin Grad?
Most certainly. I have encouraged several, because it is a requirement that we get a master's degree or a degree higher than a baccalaureate, or even a baccalaureate. I tell them, if you want to go to a school where you will be accepted, where they don't have a problem helping you, and you want to feel that you are learning something in a class setting that is not intimidating, this is an excellent place to come. So I've recommended it to a lot of people, and several have asked me, who do you recommend? Austin Grad.